Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when this finds you. Just want to talk a little bit about this morning. Well, talk a little this morning, today. Well, it's morning for me, um, but don't know what time of day it is for you when you catch this. And just a little housekeeping before I get started. Um, please share this video with folks if you think it has some benefit and you think it could benefit them. Uh, Once again, this platform has informed me about my channel. Amazingly, my channel has no strikes against it, while at the same time, I get email from them a few weeks ago telling me, right before I released the last video that I recorded, not the other links. Uh, in that email, it said my channel is not promoting positive content. My channel will not be able to participate in advanced features on the platform anymore. My channel, I will not be able to include links to any other videos or articles in my description box anymore. And so, based on that happening, uh, somebody else is must be assigned to my channel because it's people on this platform that say things worse than me. I mean, it's people sit there and they curse all day long, and it's people, you know, women. I mean, I know it's mother's duty, but it's women on this platform who do breastfeeding tutorials without babies. You got people on here that do naked art on this platform. You got people on here that do naked yoga on this platform, and it's amazing that this stuff doesn't get flagged. But I've been hit, like I said, once again. Now my channel is not producing positive content, and and that goes along since they started attacking me back in September of 2017. But it's not that my channel doesn't produce positive content. My channel doesn't produce foolish content. And so I do have a Rumble channel. And I might upload this video to Rumble as well and BitChute. I have a BitChute channel as well, but I don't know which name they're listed under. So I would have to tell y'all I can't put a link in the description box for y'all to go over there and subscribe to it. So I have to, once I get the names of those channels, I'll just have to tell you. And because like I said, I have a personal reason why I keep uploading to this platform, and it really has nothing to do with me. There's no financial benefit on this channel for me anymore. It hasn't been since September 2017, and they made that clear in December of 2019. Um, so, other than, putting content out, I have no other reason to be here. Like I said, there's no financial incentive for me. A lot of creators are, and it's actually becoming, you know, too oppressive watching videos on this platform who do generate ad revenue. I mean, I don't want to catch a 10-minute video and you got 3 ad breaks in a 10-minute video. And each ad break is a minimum 45 to 56 seconds long before you can press skip. When those ads pop up and I'm watching a video, I leave the video. I no longer watch the video. I don't care what they're talking about. You know, if I want to watch ads, I'll watch TV. I don't want to come to a video platform, and I don't want to hurt the creators, but the creators are also responsible for this because they can determine how many spots in their videos that the ads come in. And so, but enough of that. I want to talk a little bit today about uh integration, civil rights, feminist movement, great society, and and how that's impacted us in another way. I did the video years ago. The civil rights was wrong. I've talked about the feminist movement quite a bit. I've talked about, everything that happened in the sixties and how it's impacted us in a negative way because there's no positive that came out of that decade at all. You got civil rights bill, nothing improved. We got the feminist movement, nothing improved. We got the Great Society, nothing improved. We got an explosion of black politicians, nothing improved. But we call it progress because the integration was really never about equal access. It was actually about whites being able to control and direct our thoughts, actions, and dollars because we were building strong families. We were building strong neighborhoods. We were building strong communities and we were building strong businesses. See, we're not even talking about the black multimillionaires we had in the 60s that were employing thousands of people. You never heard of them. Y'all have heard me mention SB Fuller before. Y'all have heard me mention A.G. Gaston. Y'all have heard me mention all the blacks that were insurance sales who had made it to the $1 million round table in the 60s. And white America couldn't have that. We were still building in spite of everything they had done to our ancestors. We were still building strong everything, even with all of their oppression, with all of their abuse, with all of them locking up our black men. We were still building strong everything. See, we showed that without their interference, we could do great things. See, every time, every time they have gotten involved in our affairs, our progress goes backwards. Every time we built something, they came and destroyed it. They have always used a hand-picked group of Negroes to sell us the idea of white inclusion under the guise of equality. They've never had any intention of treating us equally. See, affirmative action benefited white women more than anyone. These DEI programs benefit white women more than anyone. So you got all these black people out here, you know, talking about get mad at talking about DEI and all these other companies they get mad at about DEI. DEI ain't never benefited us anyway. DEI always it follows the pattern that they've always done. It's always a hand-picked group of Negroes who get the benefits. The rest of us get excluded from it. So affirmative action ain't benefited us. DEI ain't benefited us, but we sitting here complaining because we're begging for white inclusion. Then white women are the ones who always get up and speak about how blacks are being mistreated. White women sold our women on the idea that our black women were being mistreated by our black men in the system. Our black women listened, and then they got rid of their men. Our black women have the most degrees out of everyone in this country. Notice, I didn't say what everybody else said. I didn't say black women are the most educated because a degree or multiple degrees does not make you smart. It shows that you can concentrate and focus on one area at a time. See, our black women listen to white women who held on to their men. And of every demographic in this country, with all of their degrees, black women have the lowest net worth out of everybody. Make it make sense. See, white women got our women to divorce their men or remove their men from the home if they weren't married. Then they sold our women on the idea of marrying the white owned and controlled government system. See, what I mean by that? Well, the black women without degrees married the white government daddy through welfare programs, Great Society. The black woman who wanted to go to college and pursue college degrees married the white university system. One group got government benefits and the other group got a government document called a degree. Yet we call it progress. And right today, black women are still blaming black men for all of the failures when it was them who traded in their black men for government equality. What happened when our women entered the workforce was now double taxation. Not only was it double taxation, now came the rise of daycares owned by white women to watch your black children and lose the right of you to transfer the values of you and your husband. or the child's father. Now you needed two vehicles because he had to go to work, she had to go to work. Now you needed to buy a separate set of work clothes for the woman to look good for her boss, who was more than likely a white guy whose wife was a stay-at-home wife and mother. The wife now had to take extra food from home for lunch, or she had to take money and buy lunch. And so now you got more money leaving the home that way as well. So our women fought for the right to work outside the home to basically take all of the money they were earning and give it to all the white-owned system in one form or another. On average, and see, I say what, because even if they buying lunch, they were, the civil rights, periods, said we can now go and spend our money with the white-owned restaurants. So, that's what a lot of us did. We stopped supporting black. You got the feminist movement, you got the civil rights movement and integration. So now you're not supporting black anymore. Now you're supporting white. Sorry about that, everybody. My phone keeps going off early in the morning. That's odd. I have no friends. And now my phone wants to blow up in the morning. But now, we're taking money out of the house because now the woman in her fight for equality, because our black men really wasn't treating our black women the same way white men were treating white women. White women sold our women on this idea because white women were oppressing their white women, but the white women stayed in their oppressive environments. They didn't leave the home. Tell me how that worked. So you're taking all this money out your house, and now you're giving all this money to the government and to white America. On average, when this happened, every black family lost about 35, on average, 35 hours of family leisure time each week. We went from one income affording everything to barely being able to afford anything with two incomes. Why do you think the homeschooling movement was attacked so heavily? See, the feminist movement said for women to assert themselves. How has that worked out? 80% of degrees earned in the medical industry today are obtained by women. And guess what? Medical malpractice is now the third leading cause of death in this country since more women started getting medical degrees. I'm not putting the women down. I'm just saying we have to look at things for what they are. See, people say, hey, he sounds like a male chauvinist. You call me what you want to. Study. That's what I do. I study. And people get mad because I study and I talk about things. Like a fan page that I have, you know, some lady, told me I weaponize words, under the guise of trying to teach and help. Well, I'm sorry that the truth hurts. If you feel like the truth is a weapon, it's because you used to lies. And, so, and then she said a couple of things to me, and, it was very disrespectful. And I replied to her and told her, I thought you would be a better person than that. She told me you don't know me. But she said some derogatory things to me, and now you're blocked. One thing I will never, ever tolerate is disrespect. I don't care who you are. I don't tolerate it from my wife, so I'm definitely not going to tolerate it from a stranger. I'm not going to tolerate it from family members. I'm not going to tolerate it from friends. I'm not going to tolerate it. So we're not going to do that. We can be disagreeable without being disrespectful. And so medical malpractice is now the third leading cause of death in this country. Heart disease is still number one. So, see, our black men have struggled to recreate the family dynamics that we had before integration and civil rights and the feminist movement and the Great Society. See, each one of those things were actually created by whites and Edomites. Yet, black men get all of the blame in a system that looks to blame black men for everything. Rapes are committed by white men to the tune of 76% of society, I believe. It's 76 or 70, I think it's 76, one of those two. But whites love to say that black men are the biggest perpetrators. Diddy, black man was used for one reason and one reason only, to exonerate the entire Epstein list, which is mostly made up of mostly white people. You notice I said white people, not white men, white people. Black men get blamed for everything. I didn't vote for Obama, but it is amazing that he gets all of the blame for the Iran and Israel conflict today. Bill Cosby and R. Kelly are in prison for the same crimes the people on the Epstein list are guilty of. See, our black men already take enough heat from the rest of the world, black woman. The last place we need conflict and blame from is our own women. See, if our women respect us, our children respect us, unless you as a man are just a terrible human being. If our women truly respected us, the feminist movement would have died as soon as white women approached black women with that foolishness. See, the Bible says a woman should respect her husband. The feminist movement told black women they should be the leaders of the family. And look at the explosion of female headed homes in the black community. Marriage in the black community sits at 31%, the lowest of every demographic in this country. Most every other culture has a man in the home to lead and guide. All is look up to mama and big mama. So our women have more degrees than everyone, and they have the lowest marriage rate of any demographic. Is this what we call progress? See, we have a skewed version of what progress looks like. After the NFL draft this year, I watched a black woman who works with some of those black athletes that got drafted. And she, because of her position in the role, she gets to sit in a lot of board meetings with these white men who, you know, do drafting and general managers and owners of these NFL teams. And she says she sat there and listened to these white men say they prefer drafting black boys from female headed homes because those boys are easy to control. You know why? Because black women can never teach masculinity. Why do you think they hate Shadur Sanders so much? But it's not because they hate Shadur. They don't like his daddy. They don't like that he has an influence of a positive father in his life. That's what they hate. See, the other day, they got mad at Shadur Sanders because he skipped the ESPY Awards to go do something for some youth. This kid can't do nothing right because they hate him because of his father, because they don't like his father. Kid can't do nothing right. But in the end, truth always prevails. You can sit there and run with those lies and your hatred all along, but in the end, it's going to get exposed. It's going to show who you are. But black women can never teach masculinity. See, black women try to teach their sons a version of masculinity that suits them as a woman. And they grew up in a home without a father. Those women grew up in a home without a father. And so they were taught a skewed version of masculinity and femininity. So flawed teaching only produces flawed results. And see, because of the rise of female headed homes, we have seen violence increase, especially, and not just our young men. Now we're seeing a lot of our young black women. So we see the violence raising up in our community because our young men don't know how to handle conflict resolution. They only have emotional responses when they feel they've been disrespected because they've been taught from a female only perspective. Hey, women, you can get upset all you want to, but the truth is the truth. You can never teach your young men how to be a man. You don't know what it's like to be a man. You can tell them what you see other young men face, what you've encountered in your life, but you still can't teach them how to be a man. See, instead of our young men sitting down with each other and talking with another man or his woman, because domestic violence is big in our community as well, from both sides, man to woman and woman to man. They resort to violence. You know, they sit around, say, this other dude disrespected me, so I showed him. And, what you showed yourself is, especially if you killed him, two young black, possibly productive black men have been taken out of our community. one through death, one through the prison system. Or, girlfriend, breaks up with him and start dating somebody else, and, been months down the road, years down the road, and next thing you know, he's stalking her, he's following her, he does something to her, normally, he doesn't do anything to the guy for the most part, always her, because he feels like she disrespected him because she broke up with him. So, he got to take care of her. He showed her. And so now you've taken a woman out of the community and you've taken a man out of the community through the jail system, the prison system, because our young men don't know how to handle conflict resolution because our young men are being raised in female headed homes. And many times nowadays, if you got a couple in the house, because of everything the feminist movement promoted, and all these women out here want to call them boss bees and all this stuff, and I'm a strong woman and all that stuff, you still have a lot of female headed households because a lot of our men just don't want to argue. And so they just let the woman do whatever she wants to. And that woman, even in that position, she is not happy. I don't care how strong a woman says she is or tries to be, she wants a man that's stronger. Period. And that's why we still have all this chaos in our communities and in our families. Because women don't want to submit. They want to lead. It goes back to the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Eve should have told the serpent, we need to run this by my husband. You need to talk to my husband. And since Adam was standing right there, Adam should have put them hands on the serpent. But no, the serpent told Eve, just like the feminist movement. Well, the feminist movement is just like serpent talking to Eve, because the feminist movement wasn't nothing but a whole bunch of serpents. If you assert yourself, you're going to be just like God. If you assert yourself, you can run your own household. Then you hear about Jezebel. Jezebel was a dominating spirit, and you see what happened to her. And then you read over in Isaiah 4:1. All these women got these degrees, got all these credentials, got all these everything, and they still single because they didn't want to submit because their college degrees and their credentials got in the way of their biblical duty to their man. See, abortion was introduced to our women by white women. White women encouraged black women to get rid of their own children before they were born. See, our women are in tune with red rum. Turn that backwards, you get flagged when using that word. I don't care what Planned Parenthood said. I don't care what your female pastor say, and they faulty anyway. It ain't reproductive right. It's red rum. Sadly, much of our black male leadership supported those efforts. Your civil rights champion Martin Luther King supported abortion. Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois supported abortion. They didn't call it that back then. They called it, what did they call it? Well, let's just say the eugenics movement, because that's what it is. And there were a lot of black women doing these periods. Both periods were promoting this, and they're still doing it right today. There are a lot of black preachers who were paid to promote this by Margaret Sanger. And I forget the name of that book, but I mentioned it before. And she gives a whole list of all of those blacks who were in line with abortion and eugenics in the black community. Because all of these black people, as much as we respect them, they only wanted certain people to represent the race. What they felt like was good stock, and they felt like the good stock came if you were mixed, your black seed was mixed with a white seed. uh, I have to laugh on that, to keep myself from crying. Those same black elements believe that only certain elements of black society should be allowed to attend college and represent the race later in life. See, Martin Luther King even received an award from Planned Parenthood. Yet some blacks try to misdirect us from the reason he received it. See, the feminist movement used white women to lead black women, and the civil rights movement used other black men to lead black women. See, each group was promoting their own interest to destroy the makeup of the black family home, the black family marriages, the black relationship. Both took leadership away from the black men. And because black men are always blamed for everything, it was easy to blame them for holding black women and the black family back. Both groups destroyed the biblical order of things. Both groups sold the idea that black women should be the head. Both groups sold the idea that the black woman could lead, provide, and protect the home and family. Amazingly, guess what happened right after this period? Right after this period, homosexuality increased significantly in our communities right after both of these incidents. So I just watched Barack and Michelle Obama on her podcast. He said boys need a gay man in their lives because a father isn't enough. Now, if you're a straight man, what straight man thinks like that? What straight man wants an openly gay dude mentoring and guiding his son's life? Tell me, what straight man wants that? What straight man is going to tell his son, you go out and find you a gay dude to help him, help me lead and raise you? Tell me, what straight man is going to do something like, what straight man is going to say something like that? That's when homosexuality became acceptable in our community during his presidency. We rejected that, especially if you were in the black church, we rejected that heavily up until he got into office. Now we accept it, and now we get mad for those that don't accept it. Hey, if you're supposed to be in line with the Bible, you don't accept it either. I don't care about what your person or so your friend or whoever in your family decide that's what they want to do. You follow the Bible? Do you believe in the Bible? You believe in the person you call God? And you sitting there saying God made a mistake? Because some of us still stand on heterosexual relationships? You saying God made a mistake because we're still in line with God when it comes to relationships? Got a special place for you. And outside of rejecting the Holy Spirit, homosexuality is the biggest sin and the hardest sin to overcome. I bet ain't nobody ever told you that. But ain't no straight man telling his son, go find you no gay dude to mentor you. See, black women want the leadership of a man. They want the accountability of a child and the perks of a woman. See, headship doesn't work that way. Our lifestyles did not improve when compared to what we lost. The two income house is now a financial obligation instead of a financial option. See, disrespect increased in our communities after this period from the women and children to the men. Then our women, after kicking the men out themselves, started to blame the fathers for not being in the children's lives when it was them who forced the men to leave so they could marry one of their white government daddies, be it the welfare or the university. The feminist movement taught our black women to submit to the government instead of their husband. And the civil rights movement taught black men to submit to government instead of God. And because submission was lost at both levels, our men and women both stopped loving each other properly. Our communities still haven't recovered. Our women still struggle with submitting to black men. And a great deal of our black men run to the pulpit trying to submit to God. In the middle of the civil rights movement was a laundry list of preachers. And since that time, the black preachers have still been the face of civil rights. You know, these black preachers sure know how to scream civil rights while at the same time begging for your civil rights, your money. See, many of our black men are still not in submission to Yahuwah, even those screaming from the pulpit. See, the black pastorate did an end around. After the feminist movement got our women to no longer respect their husbands, black pastors saw this as an opportunity. Now, a great majority of our black women respect the black pastor at the church they attend more than they respect and submit to their husband. Many black pastors know this, but instead of addressing it from the pulpit, They see it as a manipulation tactic to gain access to a woman's womb and her money. See, they love being absentee husbands to women who are not their wives. They love that black men don't have submission and respect in their homes. It gives them easier access to the women. See, right now, the Urban League is declaring what they call a state of emergency for civil rights. Now, if we had pastors leading the original civil rights fight who were of moral character, our civil rights movement would have advanced further by now. See, we're still complaining about civil rights, but now we're blaming Trump because he has said the policies are unconstitutional. Guess what? Barry Goldwater said the same thing back in 1964. He said if the civil rights bill passed it in the form that LBJ had, it was going to lead to a whole host of problems down the road. Now, Barry Goldwater didn't say that with either one of the Dwight Eisenhower's bills. And I know some of you probably think that's because both of them are Republican. It had nothing to do with Republican. The Dwight Eisenhower bill actually addressed everything from a constitutional perspective. In the Dwight Eisenhower bill, both of them in 57 and 60 gave us more than anything LBJ put in there. LBJ stripped out Eisenhower's things that really would have benefited us. He took the Voting Rights Act and separated it from the Civil Rights Bill like he gave y'all two things a year apart. Barry Goldwater said doing things unconstitutional was going to lead to the problems we're seeing today, that we're living today. But the National Urban League, who's been useless since they were formed, because they weren't formed by black people either, want to say we're in a state of emergency for civil rights. We're still complaining in 2025. What's that? 61 years later about civil rights. But now we're blaming Trump because he said the policies are unconstitutional. We have seen zero advancement since the bill was signed. But now Trump is the problem. And since we haven't seen any civil rights benefits since 1964, the Urban League is submitting to the government again. Where black leadership goes, black women follow. Black women, you only have one leader. It is your husband. Black man, you only have one leader. Yahusha, the man y'all been calling Jesus, just like I used to call him Jesus. And when you submit to who the Bible tells you to submit to properly, both of you submit to the ultimate leader, Yahuwah. See, there's no gray area in the Bible on the vertical line. It goes from Yahuwah to Yahusha to husband to wife to children. Y'all better get off that foolishness. See, black man, when you submit to Yahusha, you'll submit to Yahuwah. Black woman, when you submit to your husband, you're submitting to Yahuwah. Anything else, any other order is going to bring nothing but chaos in our homes, chaos in our marriages, and chaos in our families. And like I said, Yahusha is the man you erroneously call Jesus. Years ago, I heard when you say Jesus, you're calling on the Greek god Zeus. You are saying, hey, Zeus. See, when I first saw this, I didn't know any better, and I kept calling him Jesus. But think about the Hispanic culture. How is Jesus spelled? You're not saying Jesus. You're saying, hey, Zeus. You're not saying, hey, Zeus. You're saying, hey, Zeus. You're calling on a Greek god. See, I used to try and justify the name Jesus anytime I had a discussion with an atheist or agnostic. I mean, I even back then, before I really got studied and started doing a little bit deeper research, I went through and saw all, because, they justified, not being a J, his name was Iesus, Iesus, and then I saw another one, Ieosus, and they were showing all the different periods where it translated and changed and changed and changed, you know, but it's amazing, you know, how they have to just keep making up stuff and making up stuff and making up stuff because, like my stepdad used to tell me growing up, when you tell one lie, you got to keep telling other lies to cover up the first lie. He said, and then by the time you keep telling all those lies, you forget the first lie you told. So Iesus ain't his name. Ieosis ain't his name. Jesus ain't his name. Yahusha is his name. And I still remember a buddy of mine years ago. He's passed on now, y'all have heard me mention him, how he would call when he's traveling, them late nights, early mornings when his wife would fall asleep. He would call and we would talk and we'd have Bible study and we'd just talk man to man and things like that. And he said, maybe our prayers aren't being answered because we're not calling on the true son. And so, I just watched the video, matter of fact, last night. And before I went to bed, right before I went to bed, and was talking about, you know, the reason they gave us this white image, and he's talking about the importance of Yahusha, man you call Jesus. And he's talking about why the color is important. And it's not what you think it is, not because it's not a racial thing. It's they gave you this other image so you would be more willing to accept the false Messiah when he comes through those clouds. And so you're thinking you're gonna be running into the arms of Yahusha, the Messiah, but you're going to be running into the arms of Jesus. You're not going to be running into the arms of Yahusha. And Jesus is a satanic creation. But, I'm not here to talk about all that. But, when I would get in those discussions with the atheists or agnostics, they would always, and I mean, they had a good argument. And they would always tell me, Jesus, he made up. And say, because the letter J, Jesus didn't exist because the letter J wasn't even a letter when he supposedly walked the word. They say if he walked the earth 2,000 years ago, the letter J what didn't come around to I think the 16th century. 15, I think the year was it 1524, something like that. And you know, I know better now. But talking to atheists and agnostics have never made me deviate from the Bible. Every time I talk to one of them, it makes me go and study more. And I say, well, maybe they know something I don't know, and they did. The letter J wasn't his name. So Jesus was a made up creation. Well, Jesus is a made up creation. His name is Yahusha. So I know better now. See, I don't call on Jesus in my house anymore. I don't call on, when I pray, I don't pray to Jesus anymore. I haven't for years. I call on Yahusha. I pray in Yahusha's name. I was taught, when you pray, say in Jesus' name, amen. I don't do that no more. I say, in Father Yahuwah, in your son, Yahusha's name. I don't call on Jesus' name. No, Jesus doesn't escape my lips unless I'm just talking about to somebody, and, we might be talking church stuff, and they don't know any better, just like I used to not know any better. But I don't use Jesus. I don't use God anymore because God can mean anything. You can make money your God. And I knew somebody like that who God was money. And we see a lot of those in society too, but I knew somebody personally whose God was money. God can be, the Statue of Liberty. God can be the Washington Monument or Lincoln Memorial. I mean, that's what they building for. Gods can be Mount Rushmore because that's what they building them for. They creating idols for you. But I believe one of the 10 Commandments say, do not create any graven images. I am a jealous Elohim, not God. God is a title. Now, I'm pretty sure our Bible says don't create idols for yourselves out of wood and stone. What is Mount Rushmore made out of? What is the Statue of Liberty made out of? What is the MLK statue made out of? You get the idea? We're not even supposed to really paint images of what Jesus is supposed to look like. But they did it anyway because they had to go through during the Renaissance period, and I've talked about that years ago on some of my videos. And they had to create a whole new group of people that looked white because they had sinister plans and motives in place back then. But anyway, I don't call on the name Jesus no more, and I advise you to study. And if you still feel comfortable calling on Jesus, more power to you. I submit to Yahusha, not Jesus. My wife submits to me, not any so-called black leader, and definitely not to a white woman or a pastor. I'll talk to you later.